So, hello and namaste and Jai Jinendra. This session was very much long awaited for us and much needed for all of us because we wanted that and we knew that our viewers will all agree to this, that this session on Jain heritage or the modern day Pakistan, and everybody wanted to sort of know about it. So our guest today here is Sir Asif Mohammed Rana. He will be covering a number of fascinating topics today. In this session, we will discuss about the history of Jainism in areas that are in Pakistan today, and their growth and development, and about archaeological finds, the extent of Jaina temples, halls, memorials, and about other effects of partition on the Jain communities, and the documentation, preservation, and conservation of Jain monuments in the country, and of course, Asif Sir's work and his experience on it. So, before this topic begins, let me give you a brief introduction of Asif Sir. Asif Mohammed Sir has attended a series of courses on the subject of archaeology and history. From 2013 to 2017, the areas of focus comprised of fundamentals of archaeology and his survey and excavation techniques, heritage management planning, archaeological photography. He acted as the field in charge for the project Exploratory Survey of the Jaina heritage in Pakistan under the supervision of Dr. Peter Fugel. His fields of research comprise Jainism in Pakistan, field of work, documentation completed, and Jain Temple, Nagar Parkar, Art and Architecture, his MPhil thesis. And he has presented various papers at local and national and international levels, including examination of Jaina paintings and Bazar Temple, Nagar Parkar, Sindh Antiques Journals, and Ultimate Tolerance in Crisis, Jain Heritage of Pakistan, 9th International Thap Conference 2018. He has completed his Masters from the University of Punjab and pursued MPhil in Archaeology from the same institute. Currently, he is enrolled with PhD in Archaeology from the University of Peshawar. A very warm welcome and a very good evening, sir.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
So,
Let me share the screen.
Sure.
I think it is disabled from you to share screen from a participant.
I'll just make your notes. So you are the host, you can also share your screen.
Yes, now it's... Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share with you Jain heritage of Pakistan. That was earlier an ignored field of study and an ignored genre of heritage. Earlier it was not covered, but fortunately in recent years there have been some projects through which we have covered, documented, photographed Jain heritage sites and have started studying art and architecture of Jains in Pakistan. So this presentation will include an overview of the recent work on Jain heritage of Pakistan and an overview of the Jain history in Pakistan. And I'll take you with me in a visual journey of Jain sites with a brief description. Okay. Uh, there have been three projects that I know. The first was the exploratory survey of Jaina heritage in Pakistan, then the study of Jaina art and architecture in Pakistan, and there was an independent research carried out by Mr. Iqbal Kaisar. The first project, that is the exploratory survey of Jaina heritage in Pakistan, it was supervised by Dr. Peter Flugel. He works in Center of Jaina Studies in SOAS, London University. And in Pakistan, the project was coordinated by Dr. Mirza Nasir Ahmad, and the research work was done by Mr. Muzaffar Ahmad, and I did the field work of this project. Mr. Ravinder Kumar Jain from Punjab, Indian Punjab. He was very helpful in providing us with the background knowledge, as he has earlier published his work as Puratana Punjab with Jain Dharam, uh, Jain religion in the ancient Punjab. And then Mr. Ihtisham Aziz helped us a lot in covering the artifacts, the largest collection of artifacts that is housed in Lahore Museum. And Mr. Amjad Javed and Asif Raza, they also helped us in photographing some of the monuments. This project included desktop research. Mr. Muzaffar Ahmad covered this part, and then the next step was to travel all across the country, thousands of kilometers, and find the sites, because many sites, as written in different sources, are not there now. Maybe they are converted in some other buildings, or because of their fragile condition, they have been replaced by some new buildings. So it was our main target to locate those sites, and then recording their general descriptions, photographing them, interviewing the locals for a local perspective, and then preparing a database that has been uploaded by Dr. Peter Flugel on the website of SOAS. I have given the link beneath the heading. You can see, and you can look all the database and the pictures and descriptions of the sites. The other project that was very adventurous was the study of Jaina art and architecture in Pakistan under the supervision of Dr. Muhammad Hamid, chairman of Department of Archaeology, University of the Punjab. So basically, it was our MPhil research work. So we, the male participants, we covered the Tharparkar region, and our female colleagues, they covered the Punjab region. Although we worked together, we traveled together, and Dr. Muhammad Hamid was uh, kind enough to arrange for all the transportation and accommodation and photographer and draftsman. And he made the work so easy, and we traveled all across the country with him as well. So the second project was also very fruitful, that we have four dissertations about the description of the architecture and some comparative analysis and the art of the Jaina temples of Pakistan. Here you can see this project included photographing the Jaina monuments with more detail, and Punjab University's Adil Hashmi Sahib was very helpful in this regard. He is the official photographer. And then Ashfaq Jat Sahib prepared plans and elevations, and you can see the beautiful plans and elevations of the Jain temples I have put here as an example. And the final thing was, under the supervision of Dr. Muhammad Hamid, studying the art and architecture of these temples. And the third work that I mentioned is a beautiful addition in Punjabi literature by Mr. Iqbal Kaisar, with the name of Ujde Daran de Darshan, Pakistan Visle Jain Mandiran di Tarikhi Fiction. That is visiting deserted doors, historical fiction of the Jain temples in Pakistan. He has adopted a very different style. He has put his emotions, his views, and the emotions of the locals, and have made a beautiful work that is worth reading, I must say. Throughout this journey, many friends from India and other parts have helped me a lot. First of all, I would mention here Manish Kumar Jain from Udaipur, then Ma'am Neela Kesi from Madras University, and Miss Mittal Lalan from India. I think she's from, she lives, she's actual residences maybe in Kutch near the Tharparkar region, and Dr. Phyllis Grenoff. Professor Phyllis, although she's not in good health, but she's helping me a lot in interpreting the paintings of Tharparkar region specifically. So this is what we have after these projects. A proper map. We have the sites we have on the map, and here we can see three big clusters on the map. First is in the northern Punjab, the second in southern Punjab, and third one that has been enlarged in the Tharparkar region. So in the next part of the presentation, I will try to cover these parts with a brief background, historical background and distribution of these temples across the country. So here are some facts and figures put in a chart. You can see that the temples are more in Tharparkar, Lahore, Sialkot, Gujranwala, and Jaina population was more in Karachi, Sialkot, Lahore. So we have some, from the data that we have collected so far, so we can roughly see how the past of Jains was in the region that is now Pakistan. Historically, we can divide Jaina history in roughly four phases. First is the proto-historic phase, second the ancient historic phase, and medieval phase, and then the modern phase. I'll elaborate it in briefly. The early phase of Jaina presence in Pakistan, that is the proto-historic phase, that is the Harappan phase, is in academic terms a speculative phase. We don't have any conclusive evidence, though we have Digambra sculptures. We have some figures in Khadgasana or Kayotsarga. We have in Padmasana, and uh, there are some hints, but unless we decipher the Harappan script, we cannot conclusively say that these were. But to this extent, we can say that there was a proto-religion that resembled the traditions to some extent to the Jains, and to some extent with the modern Hinduism. Okay, the second phase, that is the ancient historical phase. It includes two parts. First is the Tirthankars before Vardhaman Mahavir. So the site of Sirkap, which is in Texela, and declared by Sir John Marshall to be a Jain temple based on the recovered artifacts from the site. Uh, and it is mentioned in some sources that some Tirthankars, and as Ravinder Kumar Jain has mentioned, the 14th, 15th, 16th, and 23rd Tirthankar, their birthplace is this site or the Taxila overall. So maybe the sources that Ravinder Kumar Jain has used, maybe they were in front of Sir John Marshall, and he concluded this. But actually, the modern scholarship is again saying that the evidence is not enough to declare it to be a Jain site, but still we consider it to be a Jain site, and it is preserved under the Punjab government. So this is the place which is also related with other Jain Mahapurushs that include Bahubali as well. Then the next, some mentions of Mahavir's travel to the basin of Indus, and traveling from Punjab to Sindh are also mentioned in some later sources. And one of these sites are the Gandhala Murti site in Chakwal district. And then nearby this site, there is Basharat. And when we come southwards from the salt range where district Chakwal is situated, there is a town Bhera. So these three sites are considered to be visited by Vardhaman Mahavira himself. These are some artifacts that Sir Orelstein took from the Murti site and placed in Lahore Museum. There are a lot of artifacts, architectural panels that have been placed in Lahore Museum. I have put it here as few examples. And from Basharat, a few years back, Mr. Muzaffar Ahmad wrote an article that has been published in the newsletter of Center of Jaina Studies. So these footprints, they are considered to be Jaina and of an early period. And as I have mentioned about Bhera, though we have, as you can see on this slide, a temple that is of later Mughal period or maybe of Sikh period, but it is said that it has been constructed on an earlier site that was probably visited by Vardhaman Mahavira himself. And Sialkot. Sialkot is also considered to be visited by Mahavir. No ancient temple stands there. There is probably a British period or maybe just before the partition it was constructed. Now it is being used as a school. Now when we come to the next phase, we have a gap. We have a gap between second, third century of the Common Era to the 8th, 9th centuries. We don't find any mentions, or I must say, I haven't found yet any mention of the Jaina presence, though there would be. I believe there would be some presence and occupation, but historical sources are quite about that. The next phase starts when the in Tharparkar we see Jain communities, and they were Khartara Gacha, that was a prevalent tradition in Tharparkar, and in later centuries, Jin Kushal Suri, he was very instrumental in preaching Jain Dharma in this region, in South Punjab and Tharparkar region. So we find many monuments, many beautiful edifices on these sites that I will show you. Here you can see it is the magnificent Godiji Mandir in Tharparkar region. Though the plaster and the paints visible in this image are withered, but relatively it's a preserved monument. Its tower has been damaged because of the earthquakes, but the internal paintings are intact. You can see the inner side of the Ardha Mandapa dome, and these concentric circles depict very beautiful registers of frescoes. You can see here. I think I will cover the art portion in length at some other time, but you can see here how beautiful it is. And these are some examples from inside the temple. And now the next one is another beautiful, but the crumbled, I should say, a crumbled monument. Actually, this temple, the Bordesar temple, is said to be constructed before, without the use of any mortar. So in pictures that were taken in 80s or 90s, it was in a good condition, but in earthquakes, it has been damaged. But the good news is that Sindh Endowment Fund is working on it, and their work is marvelous, as you can see in an uploaded in a recently uploaded footage of the temple, and the renovation work is in progress. So we hope to see this temple stand with its elegance again in near future. This is the second temple of Bordesar, and it is, as you can see, all these temples are of a different genre. not a single tradition, though in the basic plan, the prevalent style that was in Rajasthan and Gujarat on the eastern side, that was Maru Gurjara style of architecture, that is an offshoot of Nagara architecture. So the basic plan is the same as the North Indian temples follow, but every temple has some modifications, some new styles, some new elements introduced. So it is very rich, I must say. If I talk about the architectural study of these temples, they are very rich. And here you can see North Indian style with more projections. And the third one is much simple in its construction. This is the Bordesar Temple 2. Bordesar Temple 1 is of the 10th century. It's about 1,000 years old. And this one, though we don't have any record of its construction, but it seems to be of the same or a century or two later from the earlier temple. And this is the third temple, and again it is very much different from the other two. These three temples are in the same vicinity, almost 500 to 600 meters from each other, in the same place, at the same place. And Bordesar is said to have a huge Jaina population in the past. The other huge population of Jains in Tharparkar was in Virava. Here you can see a beautiful temple of Virava, and mostly the architectural elements are intact. And this is an older picture. Now the temple is also being renovated, and uh, there is a surprise addition in this temple that would be announced in a year or two. I don't want to disclose it now. It would be a very beautiful addition. Now that is what I call the pearl of Tharparkar. Bazar, Mandir, Nagar Parkar. My thesis was about this temple, and why I call it the pearl of Tharparkar. More than There are more than 80 sculptures in situ in and on this temple, as you can see on the tower, on the dome, on the portico. It is completely ornamented with the sculptures of Jinas and other divinities, and other characters of Jaina mythology. Here you can see how beautifully it has been adorned with the sculptures. And this is I think that this is exactly the Maru Gurjara type of architecture, where we find extra projections and niches made for the sculptures. During the reconstruction work of the Nagar Parkar temple, this is the Bazar temple. It is also an older picture. Now it looks very beautiful after the renovation work. I'll share the pictures after renovation in near future, inshallah. And during the renovation work, some sculptures of Jinas were discovered from the courtyard of this temple, and they will be reinstalled when the conservation work is finished. Now, when as I have mentioned, then Jin Kushal Suri Dada Gurudev was very instrumental in preaching Jain religion in southern Punjab and Tharparkar. So his samadhi is also in Pakistan near Bahawalpur, as you can see in the background, the famous Dirawar Fort of Cholistan. So outside the boundary wall of the Dirawar Fort, this samadhi still stands, though its importance is not understood over here. That's why there's no conservation work for it. And the struggle of Jin Kushal Suri resulted in continuous tradition of Jains in the next period that continues to the period of to the time of partition. So in Multan, we have in the southern Punjab region, we have Sri Parshvanatha Shvetambra Jain Mandir. It is a very beautiful temple now used as a madrasa. The ground floor has been used as a madrasa, and the students of madrasa take good care of the paintings and the building of the temple. Though no restoration work has been done, it is relatively in a good condition. Right behind the this temple, this Shwetambra temple, a very narrow street leads to this Digambar temple that is has a beautiful building, but it has no paintings or any sculptures. It is a building in Western style, and it has been inhabited by a local family. Another temple, the Gambar temple in Multan, Kent. You can see here it is also of modern period and much simpler in its construction. Another temple of the same genre is in Diji Khan. I was not able to visit this place, so I am using pictures that were provided by Ravindra Kumar Jain. It is also very beautiful, and it is almost the same as the Shri Parshvanath Shvetambra Jain temple of Chudi Sarai Bazar, Multan. And afterwards, we see in the last century, Vijay Anand Suri, whose name was Atma Ram. He was very instrumental in preaching Jain Dharam in Punjab, and he produced a very rich literature in the defense of Jain religion against other religions. And he was also behind the construction of many temples, schools, community halls all across Punjab. So his samadhi is a beautiful monument. It is in Gujranwala on GT Road, and is also there's also a small temple near this building. So here you can see the shift of architectural fashion. You can see the ribbed dome and lotus petals on the drum. These they and multicast arches that signify to the period that was probably later Mughal or Sikh period, I think, as the construction is in uh, a decade or two maybe before the partition. So we can imagine that how Sikh elements and Mughal elements have been used over here. Another temple that is near the Sheramwala Bagh, where the Baradari of Ranjit Singh is there, if I'm not wrong. So the behind that Sheramwala Bagh, this temple stand, but I was not fortunate enough to take good pictures of this monument. But again, we have a different style, an octagonal or 8-facet tower we can see here. Near Gujranwala, there is a small town, Pipnaka. Here is again a very beautiful but unattended Jain temple. Unattended in a sense that a government office is working in this building. And this is also a beautiful, though earthquake or any other disaster has not done any harm to this temple. It is in a good condition overall. Another very beautiful and in if I call it the pearl of Punjab regarding in the Jain temples, then I maybe I'll not be wrong because this beautiful temple, though it is not in a good condition, heavy rains have damaged its floors, and paintings have also been withered, but still each of the rooms still has beautiful paintings. I'll share with you maybe some other time. I think I have added a painting from this temple, and all the collection that is displayed in Lahore Museum. Most of, not all, but most of them have been taken from these temples. This Rasulnagar temple is also in Gujranwala, and this Pipnaka, it is also in district Gujranwala, and this temple that I've earlier talked about is also in Gujranwala. So most of the collection of Jaina artifacts in Lahore Museum are from these Gujranwala temples. A very different style. I haven't seen any other temple in this style is the Swatamra Jain Temple, Narwal. So it is also very beautiful, but in a bad condition of preservation, though it looks very good. But the locals told us that whenever there is an earthquake, we can see the building waving in air. So much attention is needed to preserve it. Another Jain temple, uh, very different architecture, though it was prevalent in Sikh period and later Mughal period. But if we compare these temples to the temples of Tharparkar, then they are very different. Now, I have taken some examples from the artifacts displayed in the Jaina gallery in Lahore Museum. They include sculptures of Jinas, different Jinas. Inscriptions mention which Jina has been carved, and there are footprints of Vijay Anand Suri, and there are some architectural panels that are decorational, and this panel that you can see, and they house the footprints of Vijayanand Suri as well in the center with dome, which is very beautiful. And um, I haven't seen any similar artifact in the museum. It is very beautiful. This is an example of the paintings. It is from the Rasulnagar temple, and Shatrunjaya hill has been depicted here. And the core theme of other buildings, the core theme of other paintings in different temples, like the Bazar, Mandir Nagar Parkar, and some other temples as well, is the depiction of the pilgrimage sites of Jains, or some events from the lives of Jinas or other great personalities in the Jain religion. So one example is in front of you. This is a part of that big fresco in the Gambara of the Rasul Nagar temple. Here is another example. This is painting from the Antrala of Bazar Mandir Nagar Parkar. You can see Sri Lakshmi in the center, and some attendants are approaching her, and you can see Rekhudev on the Rekhudev, or the Ajitanatha, the other name for him, on the left, and probably Rishabnath on the right, as the bull is, it's not clear, but I think it's a bull under his seat. So the conclusion is Jain heritage of Pakistan is no more a neglected field of study, though we are at an early stage to study the art and architecture, because there is no expert of Jaina art and architecture in Pakistan. That's why our humble beginning is the first thing that we have initiated, and we are very hopeful that as our friends from India and other parts of the world are helping us so much in making a better understanding of Jaina art. So we are hopeful that it will be a developed subject and field of study in near future. And the other thing is that Jaina heritage of Sindh is in comparatively intact state, and good news is that it is being conserved by the Sindh Endowment Fund and Sindh Antiquities Department. That is the Department of Archaeology in the Sindh. They are working in a very good way, but more expertise in preserving the artwork is needed, but still it is a great work. I must appreciate it from this platform. And the other thing is that Jain temples of Tharparkar, as I have earlier said, the Tharparkar temples follow the Rajasthani or the Gujarati school of architecture, and the script that has been used there is the Gujarati script, and the language is the Parkari, or a dialect that is between Gujarati and Parkari language. But these hints tell us that these temples were more influenced from the Jaina communities of Rajasthan and Gujarat. Nagar Parkar is situated, as you know, on the border, and the towns of Tharad and Vav are very close to the border, and they have a Jain community in it. And Girnar and Shatrunja hills, they are also about, I think, 100 or 150 kilometers of, like, they're not far away from these sites. So the influence of important sacred Jaina pilgrimage site was on these monuments. The next thing is that Jain temples of Punjab, they followed their contemporary Hindu, Sikh, and Mughal architectural features, as we have already seen. And the need is more in-depth studies are needed to interpret the art depicted in these temples, and more effort is needed to preserve them for the future generation. Uh, Thank you for your patience. Thank
It
you very
was.
much.
It
Now you
was a
can.
lovely, lovely presentation, sir. Very detail oriented. So we have some questions for you. Um,
Yeah,
so,
sure.
so shall I start?
Yes, please.
So one of the questions is that post partition, obviously, there are many stories associated, Jain stories. So have you come across personally, like, have you come across any particular memories or existence of Jain communities in the area which are a part of modern day Pakistan, or do people remember Jain as a separate group, or do they deemed as Hindus? I mean, because partition
Well,
occurred in past century only, so.
actually, if I talk about the general public, they consider Hindus and Jains to be the same. They don't know the difference between Jains and Hindus. Though the academic circle, they very well know what is the difference. So the locals, they don't know, though the elderly people in Tharparkar, they remember their Jain neighbors, and I interviewed some of the elderly people, and I'll be conducting some more interviews in the next few months to explore more about this thing. This is very important. There is a project of the National History Museum of Pakistan to collect to document the oral history, and I don't know whether they have come across any Jaina story. But in Tharparkar, I was fortunate enough to meet a Jain family who still live there, and I'll try to interview them in the next few months. And those locals, they do remember that वो कैसे खाना खाते थे, या वो शाम से पहले कैसे ढक देते थे चीज़ों को. So they do remember some things, but to reconstruct a proper history, it's not their stories or their memories are not that enough. So taking the opportunity of this platform, I would request the families who migrated at the time of partition or after partition to please share with us their memories. Their memories can help us in identifying some more monuments related with the Jains. They can help us in identifying some other buildings and reconstructing the history. But there is not, a general understanding of Jain neighborhood in these days. There are a few elderly people, and another effort that I want to mention here is of Ravinder Kumar Jain. He has tried to interview some families that he was able to interview in Punjab, and that information helped us a lot in locating some of the sites. And the same way, the families who have migrated from Tharparkar region, they can also help us a lot in finding, like there is a site, Jamkhanji Wandio. Some people think that it was a Jain site, but there is no inscription, no painting, no sculpture. So the confirmation of that site to be the Jain is difficult for us. And there are so many examples like this. So such sharing of memories would be very fruitful. But so far, the, there is not much work in this regard.
Adding on to this, I think coming from a Jain community personally and living in a community which has sort of migrated from Pakistan and sort of created an entire temple or a community of sorts here in India. What I've seen is that they have tried to reconstruct the same temples, because the names that you took in your presentation, I've sort of grown up hearing the same similar names. Nagaur, like you said, I've sort of grew up hearing stories from those regions per se, and even you said that there's I the same similar temples sort of have been constructed here now, even in Ludhiana. Some the Samarak of Dharamdas ji, and which are very peculiar to certain Jain communities only. So Dharamdas ji, Baba Gajja ji, all of their Samaraks have been created here in these regions, and they sort of go to Pakistan, they get the stones from there, and then they reconstruct the entire thing right here. They are trying to reconstruct the entire temple, or of how it was there back in Pakistan to here. And I'll be very grateful if I can sort of patch you up with the people who have sort of migrated and keep on telling me the similar stories. My next question to you would be that what kind of attempts have been made by the Pakistani government, NGOs, and international organizations to preserve, conserve, and restore the Jain heritage of Pakistan? Is there a possibility of a collaboration between the government of Pakistan and India or the Jain community to improve the status of these heritage buildings by any chance?
As I have already mentioned, that very, very serious initiatives have been taken by the Sindh Endowment Fund, and they are doing a marvelous job to conserve and renovate the temples. And the present government of Pakistan, it is also very interested in religious tourism and preserving the heritage of Pakistan, whether it is Jain heritage, Sikh heritage, Hindu heritage, Buddhist heritage. So the work is underway, and but in Punjab there is less attention. So through our academic work, through paper presentations, and through organizing conferences, we are trying to take attention of government and take attention of international scholars and different people, so that after such attention, they should also be renovated. But more attention and focus is on the sites in the Sindh, specifically in Tharparkar, and Punjab needs more attention. And yes, their possibilities are always there, and some plans were also underway in 2018-19, but I don't know why, and they were not carried on. But I hope that there would be some new projects for the conservation and restoration of these monuments.
Okay. The other question I had was that in recent years we saw the opening of Kartarpur corridor, which means that the millions of Sikhs can now access Gurdwara, which occupies such an important place in history of Sikhism. But it was inaccessible to the Sikhs of India for decades. Is there a possibility of such corridors which could provide the Jains access to, for example, the Godiji temple, which lie not too far away from the border itself?
Well, I'm actually not in a position to announce a surprise before time, but there are good news, very good news in near future. I must say, in a few months or a year. So you will also be welcomed in near future in Pakistan, and there are some very constructive good works that have been carried out by the government. So I'm very hopeful, and that's what I can say in this regard at the moment.
Okay. And so it was a very, very fruitful session because there are a lot of things that I actually learned from there. You can actually stop sharing and probably we can see all three on the screen.
Um,
You can press escape and then.
Escape is not. Oh, stop share here.
It was actually a very fruitful session, and personally for me also
Thank you so
because
much.
I've never exactly saw the temples per se. There's this channel on YouTube, I think Guddu Pakistan is on Instagram that we follow, that I refer to a lot many times just to see if there are any other temples left that we can see.
I it was in my mind to mention Emmanuel
Yes,
Gudu's work, but actually I was engaged in some other works today. That's why
yes, sir.
I was not able to add a slide for him. His
Mm.
work is also very awesome. He in the promotion of culture of Tharparkar and also buildings related to Jain religion. So his work is also uh, very good, very good.
There's one more on Facebook that I forgot the name of. I specifically follow because he very well captures and videographs certain Jain monuments. He sort of goes around, speaks to the community around it, and even captures the lithographs and the paintings on the murals on the walls. I forgot the name, but as soon as I remember, I'll probably ask Saurabh to mail you, or even I can mail you for that matter. But I think that such work sort of connect us very well to the community there because that's the only way for us to see the monuments because there is a slight hesitation I think from both the sides of crossing the borders. Earlier it was possible, but somewhere I feel that there is a hesitation among the people now because even my parents want to visit their homeland. They want to see what Pakistan is like or what Gujranwala is like. Even I want to see, but I think with time that will that will sort of clear out, and I hope I get to see Pakistan someday. So, really,
Yes,
and
I also.
and please come to India sometime soon. We can take you to Ginnar Shikharji, all those places which I think you would find of immense interest to
Yes, there was a visit arranged in 2019 in which there was an opportunity to visit the sacred sites of Jains, but because of the COVID, that plan was cancelled. So I hope that it will be again arranged.
definitely, sir. Saurabh,